Ever found yourself juggling a job, errands, and then, oh yeah, caregiving is just thrown into the mix? You're not alone. In today's episode, we're diving into what I call intermittent family caregiving. It's that type of caregiving you do without even thinking about it because it's just part of your everyday life. But it really is as simple, but fudge. Take two. Have you ever found yourself juggling a job, errands, and then, oh yeah, right, caregiving just thrown into the mix? You're not alone. In today's episode, we're diving into what I call intermittent caregiving. It's that type of caregiving you do without thinking about it because it's just part of your everyday life. But is it really as simple as all that? Tune in and find out what my guest has to say. Welcome back to the Fading Memories podcast. As always, I am your host, Jen. With me today is Tara Wilkin, and we're actually discussing something I haven't really discussed on the show before, which in over 7 years is quite shocking. We are talking about intermittent or occasional caregiving, and I'm going to let her explain that when she introduces herself. So thanks for joining me, Tara.
Nice. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate it. So one of the things that I really had wanted to talk about was like doing intermittent caregiving or that occasional caregiving, because it's not something we are told about or anything. And I've been doing it pretty much since I was a kid because my grandma had narcolepsy, and which is a sleep disorder, which causes her to fall asleep during the day. So I had to know where her pills were. I had to know what time she had to take them or she couldn't function. And so throughout my whole life, I've been doing things, just that little bits of time during the day of caregiving. And when you look at parents getting older or even your spouse, you start to kind of like do things that you just kind of add to your day, but don't even really think about them as being caregiving, like getting pills.
That's why I say every time they're like, oh, there's 53 million family caregivers in this country. I think that's the number. And I'm like, that's an undercount because obviously you probably didn't consider yourself a caregiver. And it wasn't until I went to my first Alzheimer's caregiver support group that I started considering myself a caregiver because my dad did most of the care before he died. And then after he died, I moved my mom to memory care. So I didn't think of myself as a caregiver because I think most people think of that as a person who's doing the everyday, you know, almost 24/7 care, like we do with, babies and stuff. So that's why I wanted to talk about this because I think people need to understand that there's a variety of caregiving, just like there's a variety of colors.
There is. And I didn't even really realize it until probably a year and a half ago. Because my parents have now lived with me for 3 years, and my mom had a bunch of medical issues, including open heart surgery and then several other heart surgeries. And so I was obviously still working, but they were still living with me. So, it was that like, oh, can I start my meeting like 5 minutes later so I can grab something for my mom? And once that, like surgery period was done, people were just like, well, you're fine now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm still doing care pieces. I'm still, helping her with grocery shopping or, making sure she's got stuff to eat that can be snack food. But you just kind of like shove it into your day and you don't think about it. Or you stop and get mom groceries on the way home.
One of the things I tell people, and we've kind of had this issue amplified in our politics a couple of times. One with Biden, a lot of people are accusing his staff of, hiding, quote, hiding his infirmity. And as a Californian, we had the same issue with Dianne Feinstein. And there was a lot of people. I mean, obviously that woman had cognitive impairment. Don't think she should have been in the Senate at 90, although I did vote for her for that last one, but that was because there wasn't very many good options, which is unfortunately a problem all the time.
It
And,
is.
people were really like, especially, I am an hour north of the state capitol. So I was hearing lots of very unhappy chatter about, her staff, blah, 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 her team. It was kind of almost like they had committed some sort of criminal offense. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The first time that something happens, you just make an adjustment and you just think they're having a bad day, whatever. We all have days where it's like, what the hell did I do? Like, where was my brain that day? I'll have those days. And then those incidences start happening a bit more often. And we make some adjustments and we keep going until at one point you're like, now you're backed into a corner. And you're like, okay, we have basically inadvertently enabled this person to maintain this position, whether it be senator, president. My parents, we had a family business together. I enabled my mom to hang on for a long time, probably shouldn't have. And it wasn't because I was trying to deceive our clients. I mean, we were a photography studio. It was not a lot of was not a lot of benefit to deceiving them. I tried to keep her dignity. I didn't want people to know, but it got to a point where people were wondering what the hell was wrong with her. I had a really good client once call and just drop massive F bombs on me. And I was like, whoa, I did not know she talked like that. And then it's like, now you feel like an idiot because you basically have to kind of admit something's going on. So this is why we need to have these conversations, because the other flip side of the coin is we have more people taking care of loved ones, either spouses or parents or grandparents, that are still working. And those people who have yet to be a caregiver or somebody who needs care need to understand what intermittent or occasional caregiving looks like, so they don't think that you're just being a slacker and, kind of push you to the side of your career, which is not beneficial to anybody.
No, it's really not. And it really is that you brought up a really important point too about like keeping their dignity. Like how are, even like with stuff I'm doing with my mom right now, like she all of a sudden wanted brand new dish set here. And I was like, why? Like I'm fine with her dishes. Like what's going on? And the further we got into the conversation, she was talking about, oh, how much easier they're going to be to kind of move. And so we kind of redid my whole kitchen. Like we got like plastic dishware. But then I'm like, fine, I will do this, but I'm going to rearrange the kitchen then. So I did it. And as I was moving like our mixing bowls and stuff down, I was like, oh, she's having trouble pulling the glass down. And so this kind of caregiving, they're not going to tell you probably that they need help with something. It's going to come in this roundabout weird way that you're kind of like, I'm frustrated. What's going on?
Yeah,
So
maybe we
really
need new dishes.
right. And so it's being that observant and kind of recognizing it in yourself that, oh, wait a minute, I'm starting to now take the car when we're going somewhere and she's not arguing and saying, oh, I'll drive, so it's those little pieces that kind of start to infrequently happen that occasionally then, like what you were saying, like especially with Diane Feinstein, it's just that slow progression of getting worse.
Yeah, and like as family members or staff, employees, you're doing what you need to do. It's like, okay, my mom liked to shoot the breeze. Shocker, right, people? Guess I wonder where I got that from. And she would, and my listeners have heard this story a zillion times. We did a lot of photo restoration. So she would take photos from a client, she would put them in the work bag, generally got their name on the form, and that would be about it, because she would start shooting the breeze. And it'd be very easy for you or I to be like, oh crud, I forgot to put Tara's phone number on here. And oh my gosh, now I have to like dig through the recesses of my brain before we were talking about the fact that Tara's in Minnesota and running the heater, and I am in California where it's 95 degrees today. Talk about different worlds. Now I gotta remember, like, what did she say about such and such picture? And like, you gotta really dig it out. So when I heard my mom just talking away, I would go out and insert myself into the conversation so that I could find out what needed to be done, so that I did not have to rely on my mother and whether or not she took notes and wrote down things that were useful. And I really wish I could talk to our previous employees, because one of my mom's biggest frustrations was we kind of had a rule that orders were not complete until the pictures were all cut and separated. Those people who've had kids, you've gotten the two 5x7s on one sheet and the 8 wallets on one sheet. Real pain in the butt if you don't have the right tools. We did, and it was orders were not done until they were cut and put in the pickup drawer. And we had like every single employee would print orders like mad dash print orders, and then dump all the work envelopes on the table next to the cutter. Drove my mother bananas. It kind of pissed me off too, because I'm like, I'm tired of listening to her complain. And then inadvertently, those of us who were here earlier in the day are the ones doing all the cutting, and it gets really old after a while. And in the past few years realized they probably did that. So she screwed up less orders. That was their like enabling tactic. At least I'm assuming
Mhm.
so. I don't know for certain because I can't ask them because I don't know where they went. But it's those kind of things that people do. They don't say, "Hey, I'm going to do this to enable your mother," because that'd be weird.
Right.
And I guess you could technically throw them into the intermittent or occasional caregiving because that's kind of what they were doing. Never actually thought about
Hmm.
that way either. So it's like as our population ages, more and more of us are going to be doing first intermittent and then probably even more care.
Yeah. And so, like, for me right now, obviously, I had a whole history of doing a lot of intermittent caregiving. But, my mom, her surgeries and stuff are done and that, but there's still days that I do stuff for her. Like, she was trying to set up something on the TV and got super frustrated and had to have me come down and set up the TV. And
And in
so,
all
it's
fairness,
those
Tara,
pieces.
Tara has a tech background, and I think you kind of need that for TVs these days.
Okay, but even me, like, tech background is like, oh my gosh, there's stuff I don't even know how to do on the TV.
Yeah.
And
Okay. So
usually my mom actually can figure that kind of stuff out a little bit more than sometimes I even can, because that's the tech stuff I get frustrated with. But it was just that, again, it's that little piece of, oh, it's going to take 20 minutes or whatever to set up the TV. Even if it's, you were at their house and doing it, it's still that little bit of time that you just do it and you don't think about it as being caregiving.
yeah, you're just there. You're visiting. You're taking. Maybe it's a holiday. I
Yep.
found those kind of incidences to take away from the enjoyment and the positive memories. And I don't want to say it was stressful, but it was like stressful. It was like stressful on a minor level. Like, ugh, okay. I was enjoying having this conversation with my aunt that I haven't seen for months, but sure, I'll take care of that for you. And it's just,
Yes.
it'd be easy for a lot of people to like build up resentment. Like, you're call me at my office, I'm stopping and getting you groceries and then I'm fixing your TV and you're calling me in the middle of the day bugging me about this. Yeah, it's like if you're getting those
And
phone calls,
holidays are a great point. And that's one of the things I had actually had on my notes to call is that you all of a sudden start doing more holiday stuff than what they used to do. Like my grandparents used to host Christmas all the time. And pretty soon it got to be like the table wasn't cleared off before we would get there. So then we were just like, oh, okay, the day before, I'm going to have to go to grandma and grandpa's, clear off the table so that we can have the stuff for Christmas. So it's those pieces that you're just like, oh, I guess I did do some caregiving.
I guess it's just I guess we should look up the actual definition of caregiving. I bet you this intermittent stuff doesn't really pop into the full definition because again, it's like there's so many different flavors of caregiving. It's like going to Baskin Robbins. That's a better analogy than colors. It's
Ooh,
like
ice
two of
cream
my
flavors,
favorite
that
things,
works.
art and ice cream. So how
But
do we
but you think about it though with
hmm?
being that resentful piece because because you don't think of it as like doing caregiving or whatever, it just kind of slowly builds until you all of a sudden yell or get frustrated or something. And it's because it's been kind of low key and not really thought about. Once I had that kind of like mind flip of, oh, hey, I'm still doing caregiving, even if it is just running down occasionally. I was able to take my own frustration and go, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, that's a good
So if
reason
that can
to,
help people,
yeah, that's a good reason to have more broader, that's not good grammar, have a broader definition of caregiving to help people avoid these kind of frustrations. Because I can picture somebody, and I'm going to ask you a question about your job, your previous job in a second, but like you're getting yelled at by your manager because your parent's calling too much, which may not be a lot, but it's more than somebody else's parent who doesn't need help. Or you finally get on vacation and mom calls you every couple of hours and you're like, leave me alone. So when you were saying, like, can I start my meeting 5 minutes later, were people understanding of that, or did you kind of have to educate them? I think I know the answer to that.
actually, it was a mixed bag. And I will say, surprisingly, I had a male manager and a male coworker who actually got it better than some of the females,
Hmm.
which was a huge kind of eye-opening piece for me too.
Was it maybe because the women, did they have kids and maybe they just did all this stuff and it's just life, or there was, your
That could be.
responsibilities, like men don't do a
And I
lot of
called it
this.
out.
And I think it needs to be called out so people understand, hey, I have multiple responsibilities and one is not more important than the other. Like my job is not more important than my mother. My mother is not more important than my career. Although I'm sure there's people that are going to argue with that one. But we can't all just say, oh, I have to quit working to take care of my mom because, hello, life is expensive. I'm from California. Probably a little more expensive than Minnesota, but that's okay.
Just a
Not
little.
pro- Yeah, well, I don't have, like my husband's in real estate and some of the prices in other states are like, really? Like, I'm sorry that we've spread that around the country.
Yeah, you could have kept that. We didn't need that.
Yeah, for real. It's like there's a reason California is expensive because we have everything here. It is August and I am not running my heater, so there's a huge plus right there. But we have wildfires and earthquakes. Not too many earthquakes, but
Yes,
anyway,
yeah, no, I'm
um,
good.
employers
But I
need.
think
I think employers need to understand that we cannot segment like, okay, from 8 to 5, I'm employee, and other than that, I might be a mom, a spouse, caregiving to my parent. It all bleeds over, and we need to find ways to invest in employee caregivers because companies are already losing money. It's already affecting their bottom line. It's affecting their institutional knowledge. It's in everybody's best interest to have a cultural shift on this, which is why we're having this conversation.
and it really does depend on where you work. If you trust your manager, like I was lucky enough to trust my manager and be like, hey, this is what's going on. But not everyone has that ability or feels like they can approach their manager. So it really does need to come from within the company at the manager and higher up levels too.
And one of the suggestions that I make for companies is, and this is free. Here's one way to support your employee caregiving, and it doesn't cost you might actually get money, not directly, but indirectly from starting a care economy, care culture, is just start having people from the top down talking about their caregiving journey. And,
Yep.
CEO is probably not doing 24/7 with mom or grandma or spouse, but they might be doing what you're talking about, stopping and getting groceries, or maybe, they're coordinating paid help. That's still caregiving.
Mhm.
And once you start talking about it, everybody, you can share your experiences and resources, and you're opening up the understanding, so the trust then is there. Because I think that's a huge problem. It's like, well, I can't tell my manager that, well, yeah, my mom healed from surgery, but the surgery affected her physically or mentally or both, and I'm still
Mhm.
kind of helping out a lot more than I expected to. Because then they just think, oh, well, you're not going to be very big use to us. And it's like, well, I got to be a use to everybody here. It's going to be a big
Yeah, and that's
challenge.
really true. And I know that some of like the big companies are like, oh, well, we'll give you a day a year or 3 days a year. Well, that's great if mom has surgery and you've got to be at the hospital and the next day to help her. That's not great when you need that extra 5 minutes to run down and, help her get her pill jar open that she can't get open or whatever. So, really, kind of like, yes, it's a great first step that some of the bigger companies are doing. It just needs to then kind of take it to the next step of saying, okay, what does this look like when it's not that like really acute, immediate caregiving?
Well, especially for people like myself, my mom had Alzheimer's for 20 years. My sister used up her family medical leave mostly because
Mm-hmm.
she wanted the time off. So our dad was on hospice. She took those 6 weeks and basically looked for a new job. She was not doing more care for our parents than I was, and I didn't take time off because I had my own business and I couldn't pay myself if I didn't work. So, that's great, but 6 weeks meant nothing. Like my mother was still bad. My dad died, and now it's even more intense. Okay, so that's not that beneficial. And here is a shocker. I do not think that we need a government solution to the caregiving other than we need things like tax credits, paid family leave across the board, like the very big solutions. And I think the smaller, more, I don't want to say personalized, maybe more customized solutions are going to come from the different corporations and businesses that are dealing with those of us who are caring for our aging population. And I like to say, the silver tsunami is upon us, and if you don't pay attention, you're going to drown before you even realize what's happening. And so one of the things that companies can also do, a lot of the bigger companies have wellness programs. At least I've heard that. I've been on my own since like 1990, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I've read about them, and even with occasional caregiving, you're just under a lot of pressure, especially if you have kids and you're doing stuff for mom. You're picking the kids up at school, and you're going to the grocery store, you're dropping off at grandma's, and blah, blah, oh, that just sounds not fun. I didn't have to worry about that part, but people get very stressed out, very burned out, and you can expand the wellness program if you start having these conversations about the caregiving that people are doing and open up the dialogue, then you can find out, hey, Tara needs a little more support mentally and Jennifer needs, ways to get off her butt and get moving so we can expand, there's a lot of options, and that's also not going to cost them very much money. And now they've got happier, healthier employees who are going to be more loyal, and they're not using up as much of the healthcare expenditures that companies put out, which I'm sure is tremendous. And it benefits everybody. And that's my soapbox lately.
Well, and I think you also really need to have companies be nimble because it is kind of it's not that one size fits all.
Oh, for
Because
sure.
if someone is dealing with Alzheimer's or dealing with cancer, I mean, that is a whole other level of caregiving too, that really needs to kind of have additional support. Um, the health and wellness, I've been on the back end as the tech person for them. So I think there kind of needs to be a big overhaul for the health and wellness to really have an impact. But I will say yes to the stress piece. Like you have to, and that's I think one of the things I wanted to bring up is when you kind of recognize that you are taking on these extra responsibilities and you didn't get your own to-do list done, it's okay to say, oh, wait, I need to take a break, or how can I ask for some help? Because, maybe it's that you're taking your parents to the doctor. If you have somebody else in your family, could they potentially take them to one of the appointments? Or doing little things like that would help so you're not having to do all of it. And especially if you can get a support, and I will say we did not do this very well as my own family, but if you can kind of build that support network up when it is the occasional caregiving, when it is that kind of intermittent caregiving, when that care needs to get higher, you've already got the support base there for you.
Yep. This is what I say this a lot. Regular listeners better have had this memorized by now. But when you get a diagnosis or you realize you're doing intermittent caregiving, that's the new piece to this spiel. Make a list of all of the things you need to do today. So today's Thursday. So here's what Thursday looks like in my household. You write down your own list. Then expand it to this is what needs to get done in the week. Thursday night, got to put the trash cans out for trash tomorrow. Then expand it into what has to happen monthly. I don't think most of us have too many monthly, responsibilities or tasks. And then throw in all the intermittent stuff like doctor's appointments and stuff. Like I just had to make a video appointment with my doctor to go over some blood work. And it's like, I'll be really glad when I'm done getting caught up on all this crap because I'm really tired of going to doctors. Very healthy and I'm tired of dealing with them. But the second step to this, so now you have a full list of all your tasks. Then you're going to write down everybody you know. They do not have to be only family or only in your town. Write down like all the people that you know that you think will be able to help you. And this is the crucial piece, write down the task you think they can help with. And I've said this a lot. Do not ask me to call insurance companies or banks or any of that stuff. The thought of it stresses me out. But if you need somebody to take your loved one on walks with the dog, bring you over some food, baked goods especially. I love to bake, but I can't eat all that stuff by myself because, don't need a whole new wardrobe because it got too small. And then when Tara comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, Jen, I didn't realize your mom's Alzheimer's was so bad. Is there anything I can do to help?" Bam, I have an answer because now I know what needs to be done. I have a pretty good idea what Tara can do, and like she can program the TV because I can't. Maybe that's it. And you're not going to feel overwhelmed by my request, and you're not going to feel like you're getting sucked into our, I don't want to say drama, but like people are afraid that, their time's going to get, not hoovered up, basically. They're going to get in over their heads. That's the right way of putting it. And if you ask them to do something that is, easy for them to put into their intermittent caregiving for you, the chances they're going to say yes are great. So, but we also need to kind of expand that somehow to companies, like companies. I think if we have more conversations about what everybody's doing, what their caregiving is like, because you've probably got people with young kids. You might have somebody that's got teenagers that have that are neurodivergent, or maybe you've got it like I have past clients who have an autistic son who cannot live independently. They're not at retirement age yet, and what's going to happen with his twin sister and his older brother? They're going to end up taking care of him when the parents are gone. And I can probably bet you they haven't had enough conversations because we never do. But that's just all, like Tara's doing intermittent caregiving. Jen had to take care of her mom, even though she's in memory care. Chris is over here taking care of her grandmother full time, can't work anymore because we don't have enough support and resources. So yeah, we need to definitely be having this conversation a lot more because it's just going to keep getting worse. And that's not fun.
Well, and one of the things that you mentioned is that you didn't even think that you were really a caregiver because your mom was in a facility, but you still were going over there. You still were doing caregiving stuff just in a different way.
And it's interesting. I didn't consider myself, excuse me, a caregiver because it didn't take many weeks of my mom being there for me to witness. This is a cautionary tale for some of you, maybe, to witness family members treat the caregiving staff like employees. And it wasn't that they were being obnoxious. They were just being demanding in a way that I didn't think was appropriate. Now, those places are very expensive. The caregivers are way underpaid. There's a big problem to solve. And, sometimes they would make requests, like they had to keep toiletries and things locked up, shampoos, toothpastes, and all that. Because people with Alzheimer's might mistake this pretty blue bottle for, Gatorade or something. I don't know. My mom would not have probably done that but My mom was a big Diet Coke drinker, so something that might have resembled Diet Coke, she might have swigged. So it was necessary to keep those things locked up. It was super frustrating because if I needed something out of mom's locked cabinets, I had to track down an employee who was doing something else, to do something as petty as unlocking a cabinet for me. I even asked him, I'm like, can you just give me a key so I can handle this? I don't have to bug you. No, I got turned down for that request. I thought that was pretty reasonable, actually. And I didn't let it irritate me. I'm like, okay, there's a logical reason they said no. I tried to like have things handy, like extra rolls of toilet paper were in her closet where she couldn't get to them, just so I didn't have to bug the staff. But it became really obvious. It's like, you have annoyed these people who are going to be here after you leave to take care of your loved one. Don't be stupid. So I was like, I am the captain of mom's care team, and we all have to work together. These people don't work for me, even though I'm in charge of the money. Still mom's money. So I'm surprised that thinking that way, I didn't think myself as a caregiver. I was the captain of the care team, but not a caregiver. That doesn't even make any sense. That's how I
Because
felt for,
you just shoved it into your day routine though.
yeah,
And it wasn't the immediate like, oh my God, mom fell and we have to now deal with it right now.
I
You
did have
just
those
snuck it in.
incidences at the end of her life, but
Yeah.
there was one day, and I was so glad she actually remembered to call me. I always visited on Mondays. It was like the only day that I could consistently put it into my schedule. For 3 years, I tried to find another second day, never worked because I was running my own business and doing my own stuff, and it was like, this is the only day this really works. And I couldn't take off a whole afternoon twice a week from my business. So, the one of the caregivers that was in charge of my mom, she was so funny. She called me up one day and she goes, "Your mama need new shoes." I'm like, "Oh, really?" Like they basically lived on carpeting. There was the courtyard had cement, and I would take my mom out, but it's not like she went out that much. So I was really surprised. And I get there and like literally there's like the bottoms of her shoes are wearing out. And I was like, "Oh, great." And I'm like, why didn't we buy two pairs of these when we bought these? Like now I realize that would have been smart. So I had to take her with me to J.C. Penney, find a pair of shoes that were super similar to what she was wearing, because anything that was different or new was not hers, and she'd give it away. You could buy her new clothes that actually fit, she'd give them away. It was like so maddening. So I bought the shoes, made sure, I had her try them on. We get to the cashier and I said, "Can you please take the tags off of those?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." I'm like, "And put these in that box." And I gave her mom's old shoes. I'm like, "Here's your shoes, mom." My mom put her shoes on, walked out. I'm like, okay, so far so good. And I ditched the other ones. I'm like, let's just hope she doesn't give these shoes away or she's going to be walking around barefoot. But they were similar enough that she just recognized them as the same shoes. They were really similar, and visually she probably didn't see the differences, but normally this gal would wait until I would take my mom out, we'd go to the park and watch kids and all that fun stuff, and then we'd come back and she'd be like, "Oh, your mama needs more toothpaste or more, toiletries," and be like, "I just passed the CVS bringing her home. Now I got to go to the CVS and make a U-turn to get in the parking lot, drop these off. Hope my mom doesn't see me because then she's going to think I'm here for a visit, even though we just had a like, oh my God." But I was like, and they understood that because I'd be like, "Okay, I'm going to go get it. And then I'm just going to hand it to the gal on the other side of the counter. Okay, I'm not coming all the way in." "Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's fine." I was like, oh my Lord. And then I got to the point they'd call me and say, "Oh, I think your mom has a UTI." And first couple times I'd, kind of rush her over to the doctor, and that was always a headache. And I learned because she never seemed to have a UTI. I'm like, "Oh, okay, let me call and get a doctor's appointment." And hang up. I'm like, "Okay, well, let's see how she is in 24 hours." And that was hard because you're like, this will be the time she actually has a UTI because I'm waiting. Thankfully, that never happened. But it's just like those are really hard decisions because they just make you feel so guilty. And if I had to
I was
actually
gonna,
like be at an office versus working for myself, oh yeah, yeah, I can't imagine.
and that is, and I think you've talked about this before too, is that it is such, caregiving is such a guilt ridden thing because you're like, I should have done that. I should have done it that way. Oh,
Yep.
how come I didn't? And you even hit that with this intermittent occasional caregiving stuff. You're like, oh, well, maybe I should have stopped and gotten that taken care of for her. It wouldn't have taken that long. It would have taken 10 minutes.
It's like, oh God, I should have done that even though I was so tired. Now it's extra
Mhm.
work, you know. It's like it was 10 minutes on my way home from work. Now it's 30 minutes because I got to make this extra trip. Yeah, I can see that. And my mom was about 15, 20 minutes from my house, give or take about traffic, usually about 15 minutes. So she wasn't far. I was really bummed that the memory care residence that was literally a mile down the hill from my house was so bad. Because that would have been really nice.
Oh,
And it was also like next door to her doctors. I was like, perfect location. It
vacation.
just, it was the memory care. So it had like, they always have, well, at least all the ones I've seen have double doors. So you like, where she lived, there was doors into like a little lobby area, like kind of like an office lobby. And then there was the keypad door that you had to have the code to unlock. This one that was down the hill from my house basically had double glass doors that were like bank vault kind of locked, and you had to be buzzed in, and then you went into
Mhm.
like a airlock. It wasn't even really a lobby because I don't think there was benches in there. And then they had to buzz you in from there. I'm like, this is extensive, and it was dark, and it just it was just really depressing as hell. Mom's was full of light. They had this beautiful courtyard. It you did not feel like you were entering a prison. It was like there is no way I'm putting my mom in something that feels like a prison. So yeah, it would have been really nice for her to be closer to me.
But that's like those decisions that sometimes you have to make fairly quickly. You had
Yep,
the option of when you could do it, but if that one you chose wasn't actually available, you might have ended up having her there for a bit.
yep, yep. When my dad was in the hospital, they kept calling me and saying, "Okay, well, we're going to release your father this afternoon." I was like, "No, you're not." Fortunately, I knew a lot of my friends are older than me, so they'd already been, not a lot older, but they'd been through some of this before. And I mean, they literally would call me at like 10 o'clock in the morning and tell me like I'd have to come get him by noon and be like, no. Like, I need like several days to get, in-home caregivers for the two of them, get set up on hospital. Like, this stuff does not happen poof overnight. I literally had 48 hours. It was horrible. And you're like, okay, there's three care agencies and they all seem pretty good and they're all about the same price. Like, what do I do? Just like flip a coin? I don't have a three-sided coin. It's just, and you have to, yeah, you have to pray you make the right decision. So, yeah, I hope
And
hospital stuff.
that's where and that's where having that list that you talked about is huge. Like for those times that you're like, you know what, if somebody is really good at organizing and getting like all the detail stuff, if they could do that for you, that's huge. Not making that decision, but at least getting you, here's the thing, here's my first impressions, that kind of stuff. Again, you're kind of helping spread that out. I know when my mom had cardiac rehab, one of her friends said, she asked the question like, hey, anything we could do? And it was really hard for me, but I said, hey, can you take her like a couple times? Because I've got meetings that I can't get out of. And she was happy to. So people will usually say yes, like we had mentioned before, if there's something that they can do.
And they're comfortable doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not probably, have put, somebody else that, doesn't drive or doesn't like driving, asking her to take her to physical cardiac rehab, but so again, thinking of those strengths people have.
Yeah, it's just, oops, the doggy's in the background. Mine left the room. I can never get her to
Well,
pop up on the desk to say hi.
well, my dad actually might be home, so that could be why she all of a sudden was like, "Hey, I want to look out the window."
It's like, hello, alert, something's happening. Yes, I usually get barking when that kind of stuff happens. So we talked about basically what intermittent caregiving is, how it sneaks up on us, how we need to have conversations with employers and neighbors and stuff. I had somebody that popped into the support group that I facilitate once, and their biggest issue was their person was very prominent in their small community and did not want anybody to know that that she was suffering from a dementia causing disease. And it was causing problems because it had progressed far enough that people were noticing and wondering what the heck was going on. And they were like, she's adamant. We're trying to respect her wishes and keep her dignity, but we need help, and we can't get help if we can't admit that she has an issue. And oh my God, it was like, and I was, and this person did not want, well, the person they were caring for did not even want them to be in a support group. And mine is online. So they were like not on camera. So it was like, it was a really big problem. So that's the other issue is dealing with, fortunately, the stigma is so much better. When my dad died in 2017, God forbid you put your loved one on the internet. You did not share your loved one and your caregiving journey on Instagram, which now that's people make money doing that. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but it's like, people get sponsorships and, speaking gigs and all this stuff. And it's like, well, geez, I was just a couple, 3 or 4 years too soon. And my mom died in 2020. So I'm like, I can't go back and make videos with her, unfortunately. So at least the stigma is getting better. We just need to spread more awareness so that, more people are not freaking out because they're trying to take care of the kids and the parent and their job and trying to like maintain their own hobbies and social life. That's just exhausting just thinking about it.
Well, and that is one of the interesting things that you brought up with making money, like on doing Instagram and stuff, especially the way our corporate system is. There is a lot of people that are like, I can't, something has to give. And a lot of times it is the job. And so by allowing them to like make money on Instagram, raising awareness, that kind of stuff, we're actually helping the economy and helping them survive too.
Oh yeah. It's important because I don't think there's enough conversations about we have, you know, Joe, senior employee who retires early because he has to take care of his wife. And now you've lost all of his institutional knowledge because I read a statistic. Basically, institutional knowledge doesn't get shared down the chain it's not very quick, and it's got a bottleneck essentially. So now you've lost that institutional knowledge. Joe is now lost on income, lost on retirement savings, Social Security. And when you morph out that problem to, well, now we've got millennials who have had to leave the, corporate world to take care of a family member, they're not saving for retirement. They might be dipping into their own savings to pay for things. That's very common. If we don't get a handle on this, I think our economy is going to crater so hard and so bad. People are going to be like, what the hell happened? Like, what imploded in the middle of our lives? And I'm not always the most optimistic person, and I don't like thinking about that. I'm like, that's why I'm really trying to educate CEOs and HR people that you're already losing. Here's how to stop that. And it's not going to cost you a lot of time or money because they're obviously not in the business to support family caregivers, but by doing so, they're supporting people who are obviously also their customers. So it's
Well, and
complicated.
then it is complicated. And I think one of the biggest like pushbacks that like I tend to hear about is, well, what about fraud? Yep, you know what? There could be that person that says, yeah, I'm taking care of my mom and is, not that doesn't have anybody in the house and doesn't have any caregiving responsibilities. Yep. Anything can have fraud in it.
And probably does.
And it probably does. And if you are so fear-based that you're like, well, we can't do solutions because of potential fraud, it's not going to help the solution at all.
Or,
You
well,
have
if
to
we're
take
supporting,
and say, support the caregivers. Say, yes, we're going to take you at your word for it until you prove us that you're committing fraud.
yeah, well, or we can't. do X for Tara because Jennifer doesn't need that. Like my mom's gone.
Right.
I obviously don't need that. But, hello, aging. My husband will be 60 in October. We're starting to get to that point where, he's got people that work with him and friends that are his age that have had strokes that are not healthy. One person in particular either does not do their job or is incapable. And at this point, after a conversation the other night about the health challenges this person's had and is absolute, you're going to die laughing at this one, inability to deal with technology at all. I'm like, there's a point, I live in a pretty laid back, conservative area where people are like, yeah, I don't really need, like, let's just use AI as an example. I don't need AI. What the hell am I going to do with AI? Okay, fair. You don't. You might want to learn a little bit about it so that you're up to speed. That doesn't mean you got to use it. And then the next thing you know, 5 years now down the road, everybody's using AI for God knows what, and you're totally out of the loop. Well, that's where this guy is. But after the conversations, I'm like, I do not think his brain can deal with this technology because I didn't know until the other day that he'd had strokes. So it's like, and he's
And
the
that's
same age as my
huge.
husband's, so it's like, hello, my husband's healthy and this guy is not. And it's like, they're the same age. So it's like, just because I didn't need help, I don't need help now doesn't mean I won't need help later. And
Right.
it's investing in your employee caregivers, whether it's, you know, very heavy caregiving or intermittent caregiving, or you're doing a little bit of caregiving for your mom, but you're raising children. You know what? Just support all of them. And then the
Mhm.
company will be stronger. You'll have a better bottom line. You'll have happier, more loyal employees. And hopefully you'll have more clients because people will have money to spend on your widget or whatever it is you sell. That's my soapbox.
Well, and if you're public about it, and if you're public saying you're supporting them, that brings in customers because they're like, I am choosing the company that is supporting their employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, people would stop blaming you for, what do they call it? Late stage capitalism. I'm not sure I'm into that term because it's not like capitalism's dying in this country by any stretch of the imagination. It's not late stage. It's just it's not in a good place right now. It needs an infusion of empathy. That's actually,
Mhm.
we need a more empathetic
Yes.
capitalistic society because we're not going to change our whole economy for, not in my lifetime anyway. So this is what we need to do. We just need to have conversations like this where we talk about, intermittent caregiving, what it is, how it affects you, so that people understand, oh, I'm doing that. And this is why I should get a little bit more support because it could get worse. Oh God, I don't want to think about that.
Right. And there, I think there's really kind of two things once you kind of realize you're doing some intermittent caregiving. One is, and it's freaking hard. I've had to do it too, is ask for help. That's
Yep.
a really, really hard thing. But if you can ask for help when it's doing that intermittent, you are actually setting yourself up way better down the line. And the other thing is also something that we do not do well as a society is take care of yourself.
Yep.
And as a caregiver, you feel so guilty for like doing that, nurturing yourself. But it really can be as simple as you're going to take a little bit longer shower in the morning. You're going to put clean sheets on the bed tonight for you and really like fall into bed and like enjoy your clean sheets. It doesn't have to be that, you've gone off to like this foreign destination and have this stuff. That, I mean, that's great if you can do it, but a lot of caregivers don't have the time or the resources to be able to travel. So those little moments, even stuff that, I mean, you have to change your sheets normally. So
Yep.
just enjoy them. Do those things that comfort you with intention.
I get up a few minutes early and enjoy quiet before the day explodes around you is one that I hear. And I actually very much enjoy eating breakfast by myself. Dinner is a whole other subject. Do not want to eat dinner by myself all the time. Breakfast, I'm 100% happy eating breakfast by myself. It's not entirely by myself. There is usually a 75-pound dog drooling on my leg because she wants my food. That is my sweet Luna, who is 1,000% food motivated. There was something, oh, I remember what I was going to say. We got right into this conversation and we did not talk about, like, we said who you were, but tell us what you do besides talk on podcasts.
Hey, jumping right in worked.
Yeah, what the heck?
Well, so I transitioned out of my consulting computer stuff and actually got into my own business with Courageously Living, where I'm doing presents to restore and gifts for either caregivers or people grieving or pet loss. There's also a whole section on my website about how to nurture yourself. And I've got links for Jen to post under about a couple blogs on how you
Yep.
can really kind of do those really small nurturing things for yourself and really looking at how are you courageously living in a daily life.
And I just recently had I think it was a recording with a neurologist who basically said you really benefit from these little like micro doses of movement, not necessarily exercise, but you also benefit from micro doses of self-care. And
Mhm.
it builds up. So like you might be trying to be like get to Friday afternoon when you're hoping you're not going to have to do any work, and then Friday afternoon comes and you're buried. You benefit from these little bits of time. Like I just did it last night. One of my self-care routines is to be creative, and I make homemade greeting cards. And sometimes I try out new techniques and I make backgrounds and they go in a box and it's like I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but it's pretty. And so I pulled out every single one that I thought works for Halloween. And I'm like, "Oh, this is great," because I make little goodie bags for the kids, put in a greeting card, put in some candy, and then we live in a section of our community that the kids don't visit. So we take the golf cart and go out to where the kids are. So we call it reverse trick or treating. It's kind of fun. New tradition we started when we moved up to the Sierra foothills. So my goal is to make at least 100 cards this year. Again, this is the end of August, so I'm doing good. Um, with the backgrounds already made, plus the cards I've already made, I'm like well on my way to 100 cards. And it was like, so last night I'm like, I got to stop scrolling on my phone. None of this crap is entertaining me anymore. So I came downstairs and basically resized all the backgrounds so they were all uniform and listened to a crafty video while I did it. It's like about 45, 50 minutes of right before bed. I was like, oh, this is just so nice. It's like nothing extreme. I didn't create anything, but it was just creative enough to like make me feel good. So it really does help. And I think those little moments of self-care, when I hear the hummingbirds at the feeder, I try to stop and watch them because they're interesting little creatures. We have attack hummingbirds. Like their feeder was empty and one of them swooped in front of my face like, "Yo, fill it." It was intense. These little tiny things are a little terrifying sometimes. But and then the other day I heard a hawk. I think it was a hawk, or it was a large bird. My husband was like, "That sounds like a hawk." I'm like, "Are you sure it's not a crow?" And there it was sitting in the tree, and we were both just standing there. That bird is amazing. It's like, 3 minutes of admiring this beautiful bird makes a huge difference. Like I don't see very well that's so, far away. So it's like, I could have been like, I think I see it and then just gone on with my day. But no, I made an effort to find it and appreciate it. And it's amazing how much that changes the way you feel.
It really does. And, you know, self-care has kind of gotten like a bad rap right now. So if it works better for you, think about if you're nurturing yourself or how you're comforting yourself. And
Yeah. Or just
again,
like
with
think of them
just
as like
those
little
small
mental health
things.
treats.
Mm-hmm.
I like that term. I like nurturing. That's really nice because it's like we all deserve that. And self care almost
Yes.
sounds selfish. Nurturing doesn't sound selfish. So I like that phrase.
Mm-hmm. And it's doing those things of looking at the hawk and things. And the more that you kind of do those little things, or even noticing like 111 on the computer screen, anything that you can kind of set that just kind of gives you that smile, even when caregiving sucks, because there are days that it sucks. There's days that just normally just suck, just in
Yeah, that's
general.
true.
Outside of caregiving. But when you have those little moments, it does make your day go that little bit extra smoother. And you can, it doesn't, that stress doesn't build up to that peak so much.
Yeah, it's almost like a release valve.
Hmm.
Well, I
You have a
definitely have,
dog, pet a dog
yeah.
or a cat.
Okay, so my dog, she just turned 10 at the end of August, has taken up a new hobby. So our private dog park in our community has a pond. Last summer, she wanted me to throw the stick so she could swim and get it and bring it back. Now, she's not a golden retriever when it comes to retrieving sticks normally. She's kind of barely bronze. She goes and picks it up and then drops it like many feet away from you. She stinks at retrieve. She does not live up to her name. But now she goes to the dog park and stands in the pond and fishes. Stands like a statue, and occasionally you'll see the rings rippling away from her because she's plunked her face in the water trying to get the fish. And it's like, okay, at 10 years old, now you've taken this up. I don't understand. And that's like yesterday, everybody left, and I'm like, we're here by ourselves. Could you get out of the lake, please? So, but it's just everybody loves to watch her because she stands so still, and it's none of the other dogs do it. It's just wild. And it's amazing how, like, watching this dog basically stand still staring in the water is entertaining
That makes you smile.
for a while. And then after a while, it's like, okay, I'm done. Can we please go home? Can I have to bribe her with food because I'll say, you ready to go home, get a treat? And she'll look at me like, I don't know, fish. It's just the weirdest thing. But yeah, that's like, there's so many little things to make you smile every day that, it'd be easy to get frustrated with her. It's like I bring her to the dog park to play with the dogs and socialize, not stand in the water. But she's enjoying herself. It's cognitively stimulating, I guess. So I talk to the neighbors. It's cognitively stimulating for me. But this has
And
been
maybe that's what
awesome.
she knows you need that.
Yeah. Because well, especially the 3 weeks I had no voice and I wasn't talking to anybody, starting to lose my mind. That was not fun. Couldn't have a conversation with anything. Terrible. But this has been so much fun. It's been like, I hope it's been like entertaining and like knowledgeable. I'm not coming up with the right word. Educational, I guess, is the right word. I hope people got stuff out of this because it's not quite the same as a lot of my conversations, but I enjoyed it. So that's kind of all that matters sometimes. I've learned so much about caregiving since my mom died. I figure the listeners are still learning good stuff. So Tara's website and those blog posts will be in the show notes, just like always. Just scroll down. They're usually in blue. Just hit the link and you can read all about it.
Yep. And then just one other thing is starting Labor Day Tuesday, I'm going to actually post kind of these things that we were just talking about, these little things to make you smile on LinkedIn all the way through the election now in the US.
Awesome. I think this is coming out after the election, but I'm not sure the whole
so
having to
no
reschedule
worries.
everybody's recordings. I'd have to look at the schedule, but having to reschedule everybody really threw everything off. So I had to rearrange one particular episode that we haven't recorded yet. I think that's next week because it's a little bit of a darker topic and it was supposed to come out on Christmas Eve. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not doing that.
No, can't do it. Can't do it.
And I recorded with a friend of mine who's a neuropsychologist, and he does not go through the whole Calendly pick a date kind of thing. We text each other back and forth. We record like on a Sunday, and I had to push that out 3 times. And then the day of, he's like, can we do this an hour earlier? Because he was in Indiana with his mom and he had to fly back to Chicago or drive, I guess. And he wasn't on the upcoming list. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to rearrange this whole thing. I got to get all organized again because it's a mess. But this has been a fun conversation. Like I said, in 7+ years, I don't think we've talked about this. We're talking about long distance caregiving, but not intermittent. Fading Memories is also available wherever you get your podcasts.